This is Gemara in Gittin and Daf Yomi Zayin, and today's shir has been generously sponsored as an incredible schos refuah shlema for Moshe Yisrael ben Liba. B'siyata d'shmaya, the learning of the entire Chabura should bring Moshe Yisrael ben Liba an incredible and complete refuah shlema. And we pick it up from the bottom of Tezayin and Beis. We are 10 lines from the bottom. First word of the line is Echa Nami Lo Gazer Kamash Malan. Itmar Nami. Says the Gemara, we learned as well, Omar Rav Yehuda, Shnayim Sheivia Gat Medina Sayam. Two people bring a gat from overseas. Banu Lemachlekes Rav Yehuda v'Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, two people bring a gat. This is the Machlekes Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Rabba, that really was the wrap-up of the previous Gemara. I apologize, I was just reinstating that which we just said. Rabba Bar Chana Chalash. We have a little bit of a segue right now. Rabba Bar Chana took sick. Oli Gabe Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda came to visit him, Virabba as well. L'shayulebe, to inquire of him. Bo Mine, they asked as follows. They asked Rav Yehuda, they asked Rabba Bar Chana, who was not well, the following question. Shnayim Sheviu Gem Imdina Sayan, 4 lines at the bottom to Zayin Mebeis. Do they have to say b'fanei nechtav or not? A fundamental question, which really is which we have been discussing. Says the Gemara, b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtav, or do they not have to say it? Amar lehem, he responded, ein tzrichen laimar. Two people bring a get, they don't have to say it. Why not? And this was the quote that Rashi quoted all the way back at the beginning of the Masechta. Amar lehem ein tzrichen u'mayilu yaimu b'fanenu gersha. If these two Eidim would have attested that in front of us they were divorced, Miloi mehemni, would they not be believed? Of course they would be believed. And therefore they're also believed to bring the get. They do not have to say b'fanei nechtav, b'fanei nechtav. Adahachi, as they were talking, asa ahu chavra. And I apologize once again. A little bit of scrolling issues. Seems to be a daily occurrence. I apologize. Let's try to get this up. Asahu chavra. The Tab Rashi says, what's this chavra? What's this chaver? It's not much of a friend at all. Who was it? This was one of the Persians. The Persian came, and what did he do? They're busy learning, and there was a candle lit. So what did they do? They put out the candle. Why did this Persian put out the candle? Says Rashi, because it was Yom Idan. It was their it was their not a Jewish holiday. And they had a law that on the day of their holiday, no one was allowed to light any fires. So this Persian came, and what did he do? He saw that they had lit a fire. He put out the fire here it is. Shakal l'shraga mikamayu, cause he said you're not allowed to light any fires, so he put out the fire. Omar, so he responded. Rabba Bar Chana, again, who was the one that was sick, who was the one that just responded, that you do not have to say Fanei Nechtav. Why? Because they could have just attested that they saw the Gerushin. Omar, Rachmana, Oy bitulach. Says Rashi, what does that mean? Let me sit in your shade. Or at least free me from the shade of the Bnei Esav. Because these people are harassing us. So says the Gemara, what does this seem to indicate? This seems to indicate Darumai Ma'alu mi Parsai. Says the Gemara, this seems to indicate, I apologize, we're having some video issues. This seems to indicate that the Armenians were better than the Persians. Because he said, save us from these Persians. So ask the Gemara, again, this is a very large segue, just because this story involved the same shayla of whether you have to say Fanei Nechtam. But says the Gemara, he said, save us from the Persians. Says the Gemara, it sounds like that the Armenians would be better than the Persians. But ask the Gemara, Vatani, ask the Gemara, 3 lines down, Yudzayin Amid Aleph. Ve'atani, but we learned, Rav Chia taught, what is the meaning of the pasuk Elkin Havin Darka? Hashem understood their ways, Vuyad, and he knows Esmei Kaima, and he translated Yoda Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Hashem knows about Klal Yisrael she'ein yachoilin likabel gziras aromayim. We cannot withstand their Armenians. So Amar v'higla isam leBavel. So he exiled us to Bavel. So from this Braisa of Rav Chia, it sounds like that who are the worst? The Armenians are the worst. So the Gemara asks, but you just told me seemingly that the Persai, the Persians are worse. Answers the Gemara, a little bit of a history lesson. Loi kasha. Ha makmi deneti chavre leBavel. This is before they came to Bavel, which Rashi gives us the history. The Bimei Kasdim, which was Nebuchadnezzar, and evil Merodach, Ubal Shetzar, and Ha lebasar dasa chavroi. Once Kairesh conquered the kingdom, Umelech Bavel, that's when it became even worse after the Arameans came to Bavel. So a little bit of a segue, a little bit of a history. When was it indeed that the Armenians were the worst characters of all? And when was it that no, they were at least better than the Persians? And with that slight segue, 10 lines down, first one on line, Echad, says the Gemara, let's continue delving into the din of the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? What nechtam? One says b'fani nechtav, two say b'faninu nechtam. What was the halacha of the Mishnah? Kosher. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rav Yochanan. Teaches Rav Ami in the name of Rav Yochanan lo yishanu. What is this case? When is it kosher? When I have one aid saying b'fani nechtav and two aidim saying b'fani nechtam, when the guy who's saying b'fani nechtav, he is holding the get. Why? Because this is the regular rule of saying b'fani nechtav, that when a shliach comes into Bezdin holding a get, and he says b'fani nechtav, he has the power of two. It's as if he's two people. So says the Gemara, that's why it's kosher. Kishnayim al zeh. So therefore it's two people on the ksiva, because he says b'fani nechtav withholding the get. Ukishnayim al zeh, and there's two on the chasima, because two people said b'fani nechtav, and therefore it's kosher. Aval, says the Gemara, mitach hazidei de chasima. Let's say but let's say it's the Eidei Chasima that are holding this get, then it is possible. Says the Gemara, Alma, what do we see? Kasavar, Shnayim Shevi Agam, Imdinas Ayam, two people that bring a get from overseas. Srichid Sheyimru, Befaninu Nechtav, Befaninu Nechtam. So we see that in the scenario that the ones who said b'fani nechtam is holding the get, then it's only kosher if they said b'fani nechtam. So seemingly this is a raya that in the case that we've been discussing yesterday, that we were discussing all the way back to the beginning of the Masechta, that when two people bring a get, what is the halacha? Seemingly they have to indeed say b'fani nechtam. Amar le Ravasi. This was Rav Ami in the name of Rav Yochanan deducing the din of the Mishnah. Amar le Ravasi, says Ravasi, 1 second. If that is true, that when two people bring you out, they have to say b'fani nechtav. Elameata reisha digatani, the beginning of the Mishnah, that Lord Shnayim Amru b'fanenu nechtav, two said, we witnessed the ksiva. V'echadayimra, one said b'fani nechtav, we witnessed the chasima. What did the Mishnah teach us? That it is possible. Yet v'Rav Yehuda machshir. Rav Yehuda said no. We said this case is kosher. Va'afilu get yoytu dachzedei shneim. Pasli Rabbanon. Are you going to learn that the cases are comparable? That this is also a case where the get is leaving both of their hands, and still the Rabbanon are going to say it's possible? Amrlei responds indeed, yes, in that case it will be possible. And that is how to learn the Mishnah. Continues the Gemara, Zimin Ashchei the Yosef Ikamar, there are times that he found him sitting and saying, Chasima Kasher. This is like a second Lashon, how to learn up Mishnah. We just said the first lashon was that what's the case of the Mishnah that it's kosher when the eid ksiva is holding the get. Now says the Gemara, Zim and Ashchet Yasvik Amar, he was saying differently. Ta'afilu get yotiv dachs the eid chasima. Even if one of the eid chasima are holding the get, it will be kosher. Now says the Gemara, we have the exact opposite implication. Alma, what do we see from here? Kasav Ariol's. Shnayim sheviu get, two people that bring a get from Dinas Hayam. Because that's the reason why it's going to be kosher if the Eid Chasima is holding it, because they don't have to say Vanei Nechta for the simple reason that there are two people bringing the get. Amar le Rav Asi, so now the same sequence of events says Rav Asi about 7 lines from the white lines. Elamayatov, what you're saying is true. Reisha de Gittin, the beginning of the Mishnah that says Shnayim Ayim Bevaneinu Nechta Vechadayim Bevanei Nechtam. Two said they witnessed the Ksiva, one said they witnessed Chasima, the flip of our case. Pasal and Rav Yehuda Machshir. Time Adina Geis Midachas Deishtei. The implication is that when is it going to be possible according to the Rabban and Kasha according to the Rav Yehuda when they're both not holding it against Machshir Rabbanan? The Rabbanan are going to say it is kosher even though there's only one Eid Chasima. Amar Lein, that is true. I asked the Gemara of Azindin Layamridachi, but there are times that he didn't say like this, which was the first lashon. These two Lashainais are arguing. Amar Lei, so he responds, yes, said he, it's a peg, shalos samot, that should not move. And Rashi explains that the second lashon is the lashon that he wants to stick with, that if the get is yod b'tachas deishneim, then the Rabbanan are going to hold its kosher even without them both saying v'nei nechtav b'fanei nechtam. And the Mishnah, the Gemara continues with the Mishnah on the bottom of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Nechtav b'yoyim v'nechtam b'yoyim. Case number 1. The get was written by day, signed by day. Balayla v'nechtam balayla. It was written at night and it was signed at night. Case number 3. Balayla v'nechtam b'yoyim. And again, I don't know why we're having such audio issues. It's written by night and signed by day. All these cases are kosher because either it's all in the same time frame, day, night, night, or we know the Jewish day begins the night before, so that's the reason why that case is kosher. But let's say it's written by day and it's signed at night, which is in halacha the next day. What's the halacha? Pasal. Whereas in this case of Shimon Machshir. Why? Shahaya Rav Shimon Aimer. Kol Gittin shenichtu beyoyim v'nechtamu balayla. Any get that is written on one day and signed the next day, written by day and signed by night, psulin chutz, except for Gittin Nashim. So this Mishnah begins the discussion of the Zman in a get. What is the reason, or is there a reason why one would need to write the time, the date into the get, which thereby would invalidate if the get is written on the wrong date? So says the Gemara, Itmar, clarifying this exact detail. 2 lines from the bottom. What is the reason? Where does it come from that Lamaisa we have a Zman in the get? Why would the Zman have to be written into the get? Says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan Amar, says Rav Yochanan, Misham Bas Achaisai. You know what the reason is? Cause of his niece, literally. Reish Lakish Amar, Misham Peiros, because of fruit. So what is this, Rav Yochanan? What is this, Reish Lakish? So as always, we look at Rashi, the most incredible Rebbe, and Rashi comes along and Rashi explains what's going on. Says Rashi, a get, by its simplistic nature, is to do what? It's to allow the woman to get remarried. Is the get a star that you collect with? The Pashta says no. So why would you need to have the date? So says Rav Yochanan, that what? Vihi ishta, in the case that someone marries his niece. So therefore what? And maybe this girl was mizaneh. But Lamaisa, her husband, who is her uncle, chasale, he feels bad for her. She made a mistake. She was mizaneh. But what's the halacha? If an isha's mizaneh, she gets killed. But the husband, the uncle feels bad. Shlo tichanek. He doesn't want her to get chanika, doesn't want her to get chanek, to get choked, strangulation. So what does he do? For cost of like get, he wants to save her, so he writes her a get. Ubeloiz man, and there's no date in the get. V'naisanla, and he gives her the get. Ukshemeidin Allah bebezdin. So now when they come to Bezdin, and Bezdin testifies that this woman was mizaneh, so what does she do? Moitziya Gita. She pulls out her get. She pulls out this document that says, guess what? I was not an Ish's Ish. I was not a married woman. Vaimeris, and she says, Grusha Yisi, I was divorced. Upenuya Baisishan, I was a single girl at that time. Of course, she still should not have been sleeping with this guy, but it's a totally different story because she's not an Ish's Ish. So according to Rav Yechon, because we can have a scenario in which a husband is going to feel bad for his wife and thereby try to circumvent the halacha, save her from her rightful punishment, therefore we create a situation, you have to read the zaman, the time of the get, to avoid such a scenario. Rish Lakish says Misham Peirais. What's Misham Peirais? Rashi again continues. Shemizman I give Eiluch, from the time they get it onward. If Yimkar Abal bePeirais, if the husband sells the Peirais Nichsim Belug Shella, sells her produce of her property that she brought into the marriage, Tigavim, she's allowed to collect them. Because once they're divorced, the husband, does not have any longer rights to her stuff. Therefore, if he tries to sell it, she's allowed to collect them. But the problem is, if there's no zman in the get, we're afraid the husband's going to keep on going and selling his ex-wife's stuff. And when they bring her to Bezdin, when she brings him to Bezdin, she's at her hand, she's going to get the lower hand. Why? Because she's not going to be able to prove, because he's going to say, what do you mean? I sold it before I divorced you. So that's the second reason, says Rish Lakish, that we write the zman in the get. So back into the Gemara, Rish Lakish might have Rav Yechon. Why doesn't Rish Lakish hold up the reason of Basar Chaisa that we have to be afraid the husband's going to have Rachmanas on his wife? Amar Lecha, responds Rish Lakish, you know why? Because Zinos loy shchicha. You're making a gzeira because maybe the wife is going to be mizaneh and the husband is going to feel bad. Says Rish Lakish, that is not a common case. And Taisus rightfully points out on the top, what does it mean, Znos Leishchicha? It means that it's not common to have a scenario of Znos with Eidim, with Azra, a scenario that will result in her getting killed. But Taisus says it can't be that it's just we're now worried about Znos, because we know countless Gemaras, all the way back to the beginning of Ksubis, of women getting married on Wednesday, that of course we are concerned about Znos. That is why Rish Lakish doesn't know the Rav Yechanan. Says the Gemara in the top line, Rav Yechanan, my time alo amar Rish Lakish. So now why Lamaisa doesn't Rav Yechanan hold the Rish Lakish? Because Savar Rav Yechanan holds Yesh Bal Peiros ad Shas Nisina. Rav Yechanan argues on Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish's whole reason why he created this concern was because he held that when do the husband stop getting Peiros? When the get is written. But Rish Lakish, Rav Yechanan disagrees. And Rav Yochanan holds, like we'll see in a moment, Rav Yochanan holds that the husband keeps on getting peiros until the shas nesina, until the actual get is given, and therefore in reality there is no concern. Says the Gemara, 1 second. According to Rish Lakish, now I understand why Rav Shimon holds it's kosher. Why? Rashi explains, because Rav Shimon is going to be of the opinion that the moment that you put your eyes to divorce your wife, you stop getting peiros, therefore there's no concern. El Rav Yechanan, according to Rav Yechanan, my taima, dear Rav Shimon, if the whole reason is a gezerah that he might have been compassionate to his niece, to his wife, why does Rav Shimon say the machshir? Rav Yechanan, so Rav Yechanan responds 5 lines down, I'll leave with the Rav Shimon like Kamina. I wasn't talking according to Rav Shimon. Ki Kamina, I'll leave with the Rabbanan. When I explained that the issue at hand is Shema, he's gonna Shem Yechab al Basa Chaisa, says Rav Yechanan, that was only going with the opinion of the Rabbanan, and not Rav Shimon. Says the Gemara further, Rav Yechanan, I don't think Rav Shimon the Rabbanan, El Rish Lakish Michael bein Rav Shimon the Rabbanan. According to Rav Yechanan, it comes out a very geshmaka nikuda that Rav Shimon and the Rabbanan are disagreeing with. But according to Rav Yechanan, what are you going to say? Answers the Gemara, El Rish Lakish, Michael ben Shimon the Rabbanan. Answers the Gemara, the difference is going to be the produce that is there from the time of the ksiva until the time of the chasima. I asked the Gemara, but we learned the opposite. What do you mean we learned the opposite? We just proved that Rav Yochanan holds that the husband gets the payros till the shas nisina. But what do we learn? The ibcha, ditmar. Kesiva. Here in the Bryce of Yochanan it says you get payros for the time of the Kesiva, whereas we just learned Rav Yochanan said for the time of the Nesina. Rish Lakisham Risham Nesina. Shas Nesina says the Gemara, Epach, you switch it around. So a little bit of a complicated who holds one and what holds who, but concludes the Gemara that yes, indeed, Rav Yochanan holds you get from the Shas Nesina. The reason Rav Yochanan doesn't hold the Reish Lakish because he holds you get the payros of the Shas Nesina, and therefore Rav Yochanan's only concern is about Shemi Yechape. Reish Lakish does not hold of such. We had a Brisa, we switch it around. We conclude Amrle Abaye Rav Yosef says Abaye to Rav Yosef. The Shofli sound familiar. We asked at the beginning of the Masechta. 12 lines to the bottom. First line is Rav Yosef Gimel Gittin Psulim. There are 3 Gittin that are possible, but in this case, Havlad kosher. But if Lamaisa, the woman goes and gets married with such a get, even though the get is possible, the child that is born is kosher. Says the Gemara, Ma'ilu Chacham Tekanasa. If that is true, and one of the 3 cases is what? One of the 3 cases is the fact that you have Zman in the get. What does it help having Zman? If she goes and gets remarried with such a get and the child is kosher, what does the Zman help? Says the Gemara, you know what it helps for? It helps that in the world of Lechatchila, she will never get remarried without the Zman. Says Gemara, what if they wrote the shtar with all the dinim? And they signed the shtar with all the dinim. But then, why are we concerned that the husband's just going to cut off this man, cut off the din and give it to her? My word, for such a case, we are not concerned. We're going to stop over here. I apologize that we're having highlighting and some video issues. We'll pick it up from Kasva Shavuot Shana Chodesh Shabbos in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.